All right, and before we get to the conclusion and stating the significance of this letter, I just want to quickly recap how he's using these two rhetorical devices to really press forth his argument and convince his audience. We see the two biggest examples of using the common vernacular here by saying, look, there's some very obvious signs that not even a great military mind can see. The Father of Waters, a reference to the Mississippi River, is now in our hands. Nor must Uncle Sam's web feet be forgotten, as a reference to, hey, let's appreciate the Navy as well, and that they've made tremendous progress in this war. An interesting side note about that quotation, the Uncle Sam's web feet, is that William O. Stoddard, one of Lincoln's cabinet members, thought Lincoln should take that out of the letter when Lincoln originally proposed it. But Lincoln is rumored to have responded with, no, I'll leave it in, the people will know what I mean. And sure enough, the people really received this letter very, very well, and they certainly appreciated references like that. And as far as the prolepsis goes, really Lincoln's most effective paragraph is here, where he's responding to counter-arguments of, well, it's illegal to, be issuing this Emancipation Proclamation and arming black soldiers, and really using them in the war effort. And Lincoln's saying, really, how can we have that view when in a war you need to deprive the enemy of their ability to use their property, and really any weapon that helps us and hurts them, we should be, considering it and using it. He's saying, look, by using black soldiers, that frees up more white soldiers to do other jobs. And he's saying, look, that in order to win this war, I tried other solutions. The war has progressed to a point, this is a necessary war measure where I need to implement the Emancipation Proclamation to free the slaves. And arm them in order to win the war. So now we get to the most concise statement where we see sort of all of these efforts come together, where he says, still let us not be overly sanguine of a speedy final triumph. So hey, let's not get too optimistic here. We need to be quite sober. We need to look at the facts. We need to not be emotional. Let us diligently apply the means, never doubting that a just God in his own time will give us the rightful result. So he's saying that we need to apply the means. This is, a very clear reference. We need to use what works. And as he's cited by talking to military officials, the Emancipation Proclamation works, and we need to apply its means, arming black troops, and we need to use that in order to win the war. And he convinces the audience by using prolepsis, taking the counter-arguments in, and then explaining how really those counter-arguments are wrong, and that the Emancipation Proclamation is working. And he also uses the common everyday vernacular to reach the audience at a level that they can understand. And you see that with the poetic lines here, that Lincoln is really speaking to his audience, and we have proof from the reviews that it went over well. So now let's get to some of that proof. The New York Times said that the most consummate rhetorician never used more language, more pat to the purpose, and still not a word in the letter was not familiar to the plainest plowman, meaning that, hey, all of the words that Lincoln spoke or that Lincoln wrote in this letter and that were read at this meeting were really pat. They were to the point, right on time, right on the mark, and that these words were readily understandable to his audience. And that was from a New York Times review, immediately following the letter's publication. And really, Lincoln appreciated that type of review because people did not appreciate how his Emancipation Proclamation was written in rather legalistic terms. Henry Raymond, who wrote for the New York Times, and he was originally not in favor of arming black troops, said, "Those who favor war are bound to consent to all available means for effecting the prosecution and to form their judgment on Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation based on military necessity." So here we see Henry Raymond reacting to Lincoln's Conkling letter, and really, this is mission accomplished for Lincoln. He has shaped the public debate to accept the fact that, hey, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation because of military necessity. Even the Chicago Tribune said that Mr. Lincoln exonerates himself from the crimes urged against him, shows the untenableness of the position that his enemies occupy, and gives the world assurance that that great measure of policy and justice, which, while it strikes a fatal blow at treason and rebellion, guarantees freedom to 3 million of slaves, is to remain the law of the Republic. So clearly we see from the Chicago Tribune and the New York Times that Lincoln's letter, once it was published and read to that assembly, really it went over very well. And the public, they accepted and adopted his message. They accepted the Emancipation Proclamation as a war measure, a legal war measure, no less. And then we see how Lincoln takes this and sort of rides this positive public sentiment to the election of 1864. On September 7th, the New York Times proclaimed, "All the denunciations and all of the arts of demagogues are perfectly powerless to wean the people from their faith in him." So even the New York Times is noting, wow, Lincoln's letter has really galvanized public opinion to support him, and it doesn't matter what other people are saying. They are, they're going to stick with him, and they're going to stick with his message. And perhaps some of the most powerful evidence comes from Lincoln's secretary, John G. Nicolay, who, after this letter was published, he wrote in his diary, "I know the people want him," meaning a reference to 1864. I know that the people want Abraham Lincoln to lead them. And sure enough, Abraham Lincoln wins in 1864 and is the successful Republican presidential candidate. So there we see, based on the Conkling letter, Abraham Lincoln is able to use common everyday language, the common vernacular, prolepsis, to convince the audience that he has not entertained peace proposals. The Emancipation Proclamation is a constitutionally approved war measure, and that arming black troops is a necessary war aim to end the Civil War. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.